I should be watching something else, but here we are. Hey, it's Romania Black, and yeah, I'm watching ahead again because I'm really obsessed with this show, and I don't want to wait. And here's my excuse. No, I'm recording this a fair bit ahead, but this week in the reactions, as I'm recording this, there are like 4 shows whose episodes have been just traumatic. And I don't know if the stars have aligned, if the full moon is out, if just something has happened in the water where the stars have all shifted and every single episode I've watched the last 4 days has been horrifically tragic. And I've been like, well, that sucked. And, usually some weeks you have like 2 episodes where some bad stuff goes down, but this week has been like everything bad that could happen has happened. And I'm like, oh, I need some Berserk. Is it weird when you go to Berserk as your comfort anime? Is that weird? But here we are. So yeah. So I really liked last week's episode 15, where we're doing the political games, the metrosexual nights. We're gearing up for this decisive battle. Boscone is pretty badass. I like his design and everything. So yeah, knowing that Guts shows up in the first episode in the future, I know he's fine. He may lose an arm. It's okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, Guts is fine. So I mean, what can happen this episode, right? Surely it won't be traumatic like all of the others. I hope not. But yeah, so I was like, I'm just going to watch it tonight. And I have like other shows I should be watching to stay on track, but I need some Berserk in my life. It's late tonight. It's probably the latest I usually record, but I'm like, if anything is going to get me on my toes, get me riled up, get me excited, it's going to be Berserk. So yeah. So the question, of course, is, how are you beating Boscone? What is the trick that's up Griffith's sleeve? They're using the dust to their advantage. So how are they going? They're backing up against the river. What's going to come out of the river? What's happening? They've burned all the boats. What does that mean? Guts seems like he's just ready to throw down and go for it. But what are we going to be left with? And is everything going to go off as easy peasy lemon squeezy as Guts seems to think that it will? I know that Guts is like, last episode, he's like, oh, don't worry, Griffith won't be affected emotionally and emotionally compromised by the fact that the governor's in the army. I don't know. He very well could. And if that's the case and Guts ends up saving Griffith or Casca saves him, then what do we do then? I don't know. There's a lot of questions as to how this episode is going to go down and how we're going to resolve it, but I'm excited to find out the answers. To these questions as they come. So yeah, I'm pretty excited, y'all. I think it'll be a fun time. But I needed to watch this episode and see what happens. So we're not going to waste any more time. Thank you all for watching with me. Thank you for supporting Berserk with me. It has become my comfort anime. There's just something so reassuring about it that I can't put into words. But when all other shows make me so sad, this one comes in. So hopefully my dogs will be fine. I gave them a treat earlier, so you would think they would calm down, but they are little devil dogs, so who knows. But we're going to start episode, turn my sound down just a wee bit, episode 16 of Berserk. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's see that sweet, sweet, gnarly hand. I can't love this show anymore. Wow. You know what? This is the weird thing. It doesn't seem on the surface like this would be what you would call a feel-good episode, but this was a feel-good episode to me because it ended, it ended ominously. There's this whole great eclipse and demons descending, which we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I will say, for the most part, the episode, it leads you on this little roller coaster where for Guts and Casca, you don't know, which I'm still a little concerned about Casca, but I feel like if Casca was mortally wounded, then Guts would make a bigger deal. He wouldn't just be like stringing her over his shoulder and being like, let's watch your bow from afar. I feel like he'd be more concerned if he was worried that she was in actual danger. He doesn't seem to be, so that leads me to believe that Judo's got that fairy dust. She's going to heal up right as rain. We're going to be fine. At least I think so. I think they would have. I feel like they would have been more dramatic about her injuries at the end of the episode if they had been more serious. Now, we could start episode 17 and she could be on her deathbed for all we know, and that would suck, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that she's going to be fine, but way to make us worry about it in this episode. And then Guts loses his sword. Way to make us worry about that in this episode. But Zod Ex Machina has showed up. Oh, Deus Ex Zod has come in to just save the day. Talk about that. Like, the moment for a second, because he's in, like, his, what seems to be humanoid form, I was like, wait, what? And then, yeah, there he is. So, there's a lot to talk about in this episode. So, I want to bring old Whiteboard Coon out. I don't know how much I'm going to write on Whiteboard Coon, but there are some things I want to point out, because I was like, ooh, we should probably talk about those things. But, man, God, this episode, it would be really hard for me to rank episodes, because this episode is right up there. It's so freaking good. I love this episode so much. And just starting out with Guts gleefully jumping into the fray. Like, I can't wait to read the manga and see these panels and see this artwork. I cannot wait to see it, because that just opening shot of him with his sword gleefully going into the battlefield, it's great. It's a good time. I really enjoy it. So, and the map paintings are really good. I know a lot of people will complain. Again, people that complain about the animation of this series, I don't know what level y'all are on, but I'm not complaining about it. It's great. There's maybe like 1 or 2 shots that are weird, but for the most part, it's beautiful, and the expressions are so good. So we see Zod from early on. Okay, and we actually see Casca sitting there. Okay, so we see Casca with, let me see if that's right. What do we got here? This is such a very weird. Okay, so Casca, it's a weird shot because the cape kind of looks like Zod's cape for a second, but it's Casca, and she's got like her knee leveled there, and she's got like, it's a very weird shot. Her hand is down against the ground, right? She's scoping the castle out. So yeah, it's a weird fake out, because at the beginning you think it's Zod's cape, and then it turns out to be Casca. The pink gives it away, and the spurs. The pink and the spurs give away that it's Casca, but how very weird. How very weird that we see her like that. And then we have the soldiers that are like, I guess the 2 soldiers that were talking at the gate, at the entrance gate, at the very beginning of the episode when Casca and them invade the castle, they reminded me of the 2 guards that were at the gate in Monty Python the Holy Grail, where they're just sitting there like talking and standing there at the gate, and then Lancelot comes in and just slaughters them both. That's what it reminded me of, which was really funny. But man, the perspective in this episode did a lot of crazy things with perspective. Like, it had the arrows going straight towards you, the audience member. When Adon is fighting Casca, the spear goes straight towards you, so you feel like you're getting stabbed, or you're getting a knife thrown at your face, or an arrow shot at you. It was very uncomfortable, but in a good way. It was stylistically really well done. I was like, okay, cool. I'm here for it. Awesome. And then Casca showing up with her men. And she has the little cape. So the perspective in that shot before that made me think of, in hindsight, of Zod for a little bit, it makes sense now that it was her. But it was a very misleading shot. And I'm sure in the black and white manga, it's even more questionable. Although the Spurs give it away. So yeah, everybody just goes in, takes the fort. And then Adon just looking. Adon was great this episode. What a hammy villain. And I love that Casca's like, she's not on her period this time. She can fight, amongst the best of them. She's like at her peak game. And it took Adon being a complete troll and a trickster to try to pull one over on her. I was like, Casca girl. I was living for Casca this episode. She was just getting it and just fighting him, giving him his comeuppance. And he's like, why aren't you as weak as you were before? And she's like, I'm not on my period, you moron. He's like, well, that can't make that much of a difference. And I'm like, you've not been around women very much, have you, Adon? And it's like, oh my God. It was great. I loved her facing him. And I love that Casca was able to beat him. And not only did Casca beat him, which was so satisfying, but not only that, she also like kept her troops' morale up the entire time, kept them motivated, kept them thinking they were going to win, and kept communicating with them the entire time. Casca was a freaking leader, and she deserves some props this episode because I was in love with her character. I'm glad she's hopefully okay. We'll talk about the peak romance between her and Guts. We'll get there, but I was so proud of Casca, and I was glad that the mangaka let her win this battle. Because that was my one thing back, in episodes 13 and 14. Back then, I was like, it made sense why she needed the help, but I was wanting so badly for her to be able to have some agency and be able to deal like a winning blow on her own terms. And here she gets the chance to, and it feels so good. I was like, ugh. Just, yes, give me all the Casca development, give me all the girl power. Muera, you are doing amazing things. And so, yep, she like rallies all the troops together against Adon. And then we have Judo and everybody fighting, right? So we have Corgus, Judo, and Rickert and everybody in this battle. And there's just dust blowing everywhere. And it works out really good because it's like the dust is not only disadvantageous to the Band of the White Hawk, but it's also a disadvantage to Boscone's men. So it's one of those scenarios where, yeah, it's bad for us, but it's bad for them. And we, have the upper hand in this case because we made them come to us. Meanwhile, that one governor, I'm glad he's gone, but we'll talk about that later, that he is just so upset. He's like, well, what's this one swordsman blocking your way from getting to Griffith? And I'm like, that one swordsman is pretty damn impressive. But Boscone was too. And if Deus Ex Zod hadn't come in, Guts would have been dead. If Zod hadn't interfered, Guts would be dead. Which begs the question, why? Why get involved? So we're going to put Guts up here. And we're going to put Griffith over here. We're going to put Casca down here because we're going to touch back on her here in a little bit. But the idea was Zod. Why save Guts? I'm just saying, why save him? Unless does Zod want to fight him again? Want to fight again? Is he going to try and enlist Guts to join him? I feel like Zod works alone, but, it wouldn't surprise me if he eventually, cornered Guts and was like, hey, do you want to fight me? And Guts is like, well, not right now. And he's like, do you want to join me and then fight me? And he's like, well, not right now. But if Guts ends up leaving the Band of the Hawk, we'll talk about that, then maybe. But, yeah, my theory is that Zod just wants to fight Guts again. He feels like Guts is a worthy opponent that could give him a run for his money. And he's like, oh, I want to fight this guy. And Guts admits that the sword that he fought 100 men with had chipped, and that's the only reason Boscone was able to break it was because it was very weak. But the sword that Zod gives him, he doesn't come back for that damn sword, so he gives Guts his question mark or a sword. Is he going to come back and want that sword back? I don't know. Here's the thing. For multiple reasons, I went back and watched parts of episode 1 before I started this discussion. I wanted to confirm something, which we'll talk about it when we get to it. But one of the things I noticed is that the sword that Guts has in episode 1 is not this sword. It was reforged. It's not this sword. Now, the question is that episode 1 sword that was reforged, was it reforged from the sword broken in this episode? Is that the case, or did he reforge it from something else? My point is that the sword that Guts has in episode 1 is not the sword that he has that was given to him by Zod. Not the same sword. Different hilt, different design entirely. It looks more like the sword he had at the beginning, except the sword he had at the beginning, if I'm going to draw these real quick and not make it look like a phallic symbol. The sword that he had in the very beginning had a very broad hilt it was broad and it kind of came up like that sort of thing. And then the sword in episode 1 of the series has like this little bandana on it and like a little thing there and kind of comes up like that. So it's a little bit different. And then this one has a big old melon, like razor sharp, razor edges stuff. Looks like a big cleaver. They're different swords is my point. And they're all 3 different. So I don't know. That sword cut through a horse and Boscone together. I'd hang on to it. Seems like it could be relatively important for you. I don't know. And so the question remains, like, okay, well, what do we do with this? So after this battle is over, and we're going to talk about this episode in more detail, but where my mind is at right now is if Guts leaves, is Guts going to leave and take the sword back to Zod? And I don't mean he's going to go looking for Zod because he doesn't know Zod's the one that gave him the sword, but is he going to leave to go on his merry way and then he's going to run into Zod and Zod's going to be like, hey, I saved you. Can I have my sword back, please? And then ask for it back. Although I don't think he'll ask that politely or like that at all. He'll probably try to fight Guts and be like, you have my sword. I'd like it back. I don't know, but Guts said he was leaving after this. We'll talk about it at the end of the episode, but could he find Zod again? Before this great eclipse? Who knows? So yeah, Guts facing Boscone. It's a fun time. And I liked Boscone's character in the last episode. It's a complete shame that they're just sitting here fighting it up and the other guards are like, we're not going to get involved in all this. No way, shape, or form. But I felt kind of bad because I kind of liked Boscone's character and where it was going last episode, and I wanted to see more of him, but mangaka's like, nope. Maybe we'll get some backstory on him or get some more on him in the manga. Who knows? So yeah, Casca taking on Adon. Love that she gives him, like, just kicks his ass. And then he just goes, oh man, I give up and surrender. And he tries to use it to troll her. Damn you, Adon. So yeah, I got a little bit worried because at the very, when we go back to the battle, little Rickert, he gets his arm cut. He gets his arm sliced. Not cool. Thank goodness Pippin's there to save him. I was like, Rickert, no. I was like, not having this. So he gets his arm sliced, and then he falls off his horse. And as this guy's about to spear him, Pippin comes in and just slugs him with the mace. I was like, And that's the thing about this. The thing about this series is that it is horrifically brutal. Like, one of the most violent things I'm watching right now, just straight up violent, like people's heads getting chopped off, like eyes getting poked out, arrows slicing through the air. There's so much blood and gore, but yet, I don't know, I think because it's a fantasy story, the blood and guts, for some reason, they don't read as offensive or as... It's very hard to explain. I feel like if you had a modern story, like some of the other series that I'm watching, like Jujutsu Kaisen or Monster, where it's taking place in the present time, when you see giant acts of violence and lots of gore, it feels more real and we feel more like close to that violence, and so it seems a little bit more off-putting and uncomfortable. Here, because it's a fantasy story like Lord of the Rings or something, I don't know, there's just a sense of distance there where you're like, oh, well, this is happening in another world, in a fantasy story. It's not happening to us. So you don't feel as it's as offensive or as over the top or whatever, even though it is. I don't know. That's how I can explain it. I'm not thrown off by the gore in this series because it's a fantasy story, and my mind can separate the fantasy from reality, right? But Corcus suggests that they retreat. Corcus is like, it's just a matter of time before we're wiped out. I want to make note, Corcus is a very negative character. He's a very Debbie Downer. He's very pessimistic. He's like, we're gonna get wiped out in no time. It's only a matter of time. Look at their numbers. And I love Rickard that's like, what are you talking about, Corcus? Are you suggesting we retreat? I love that Rickard just had his arm sliced, saved from death, and he takes time out of his day to scorn Corcus. He takes time out of his day to be like, well, are you being a bitch, Corcus? I love it. Because, yeah, Rickard's like, what do you mean, Corcus? Why are we leaving? I think that's important to note about Corcus's character, that he's very, very pessimistic, and he assumes that the worst is going to happen. That is going to come back later, I am certain, because at this point in the story, we have 9 episodes left. We've rounded out the decisive battle. We are the conquerors, so we're about to enter into the home stretch of Griffith becoming king, and I feel like it's important to establish that Corcus is not afraid to cut and run, right? If nobody calls him out on it, he's not afraid to cut and run, which worries me about 2 things. One, it worries me that something's going to happen to Rickert. They teased us with that this episode, where they were like, oh no, Rickert got his arm sliced. We're not afraid to hurt him. And I was like, leave Rickert alone. I was like, don't you dare touch Rickert. No. But that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of this episode that's done one of 2 things. It is, 1, showed us that it's not afraid to hurt Rickert, which should make us feel worried. And 2, it's showing us that Corcus is not afraid to cut and run or be a coward or leave for his own agenda unless he's called out. And so far, Rickert's been the one who's called him out every time. So my fear is that something in these last 9 episodes, Rickert is going to be mortally wounded, if not killed, and then Corcus won't have that shoulder angel that's telling him not to do the things that we think he's going to do. That's my fear. My fear is that after, if something happens to Rickert, or if he leaves or they're separated, then Corcus, the worst parts of Corcus are going to come out. And I'm not sure I'm ready for that, because as we established way early on, nothing is more dangerous than a desperate average man. And that's Corcus. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm seeing some little minor, like little flashes of a red flag, but I'm hoping that that doesn't end up happening. Hoping that I'm misguided. And then Corcus is like, well, I'm not saying we retreat, but Corcus is like, I'm also... Another thing, too, with that is the idea that Corcus is like, I'm not here to fight a battle we can't win. And if Corcus sees the writing on the wall, that's another thing that worries me, is that if Corcus sees the writing on the wall that he's on the losing side, is he going to transition over to the other side and betray his comrades? Again, I don't think he would as long as Rickert's there, but if something happens to him, I don't see Corcus sticking around, right? And kudos to Rickert. Like, Corcus is sitting there wondering whether he should retreat or not, and Rickert is, like, fighting a guy with a sword in his hand as his arm's slashed. Like, son of a bitch. Like, come on, I'd rather go down fighting than run away. And he's like, oh no, little Rickert's gone insane. Yeah, so Corcus is not in that I'd rather die fighting than run away camp. He's very much like, oh no, if it's fight or flight, I'm a fly away, sweet birdie. I'll fly away. You know. And then luckily, before he's attacked, Judo comes in with the knife and saves him. Good on Judo. He's like, he's right. I agree with Rickert. Good for Judo. Him coming in saving everybody with his knives. He was fighting like close combat with those knives. I was like, what the heck? He was like just getting in there left and right. That was great. I was like, And then the governor's like, oh, why are you spending one time on a mere horseman? I'm like, this mere horseman is very strong, but so is Boscone. I've got to put everything on the line or I'll die. And then Guts says, oh, wait, no. This is nothing. I've been through worse compared to him. I like that Guts, I like that in the weirdest of ways that Guts now believes that Guts has this belief that Zod is the worst thing he's faced. Zod is like the end all be all. And as long as it's not Zod, we're good to go. Now, again, if he sees Zod again after this, is he going to freak out? I don't know. Maybe, probably, we assume. This hopelessness is nothing compared to what I felt then. And Zod's like, is someone talking about hopelessness? I really like Zod. Zod is a fun side character because you don't know what he's thinking. You don't really know his motivations. We don't know much about him. But for some reason, he's fascinated by Guts. So it's like, okay, cool. As long as you don't kill him, I'm down for this. Also, where did Zod find that magnificent Belgian beast of a horse? Knowing how freaking huge Zod is, where did this magnificent steed come from? We don't know. But I love it. It's great. And then Boscone is attacking. Boscone's going after Guts. They're going at one another. And then we see Adon, who gets utterly obliterated by Casca and begs for his life, only to shoot an arrow at her. Damn it. Resha Jinrai, the secret art of the crossbow sneak attack. I'm like, or you just trolled her and was a bitch. Quit giving it some Cobblewort's family secret. This ain't Bush's baked beans. Get out of here. No. He's like, your body will be poisoned and go numb. So, okay. The good news is that even though it did, like, nick her, and that's bad, the poison wasn't going to kill her. It was just going to make her go entirely numb. Fine. If that's what it was, fine, whatever. And then he just tries to attack her, and she's like, I thought for a second when she was going for the arrow that she was going to, like, crunch it off like what Guts did, but luckily she's a little bit smarter than that, and is like, no. Meanwhile, Guts' sword goes flying, and as she pulls the arrow out and tosses it away, that's when, I love that cut, from the arrow being tossed to the sword getting snapped in half. Now, there were several reaction shots, right? We had several reaction shots. We saw Rickert and Corcus, which I wanted to go back and catch. It was like just a brief glance. She tosses the arrow away. We see the sword flying. We see Corcus and Pippin and Rickert are like, oh shit. Judo's like, Griffith looks terrified. Griffith's like, oh no. Oh no, oh no. That is, nope, Guts can't die. So, here's the thing. Griffith seemed worried about Guts potentially losing. Because he didn't think that's not in his equations, right? It's not in his equations for world conquest. My thing is, and I talked about this last episode, I fear that Griffith is going to be like, oh, Guts, I don't want you to go because you're kind of integral to me taking the throne. Need you to stay. Might need you to assassinate some more royal family members. Am I right? You know, especially by the end of this episode. So my fear is that Guts, is pretty adamant that he's going to leave after this. He's like, well, we won the battle. Did my part. Saved the day. Got Casca to Griffith. We'll talk more about that. He's like, I can leave now. And my fear is that Griffith's going to be like, no, I need you to stay. Now, when we get to the governor conversation, the question is it Griffith wanting Guts to stay purely because he loves Guts and he cares for him and he views him as a comrade? We know they're not friends. So is it because he truly cares about Guts, or is it because Guts is a piece he knows he can use and wants to keep using that? Doesn't want to get rid of the old Guts coupon just yet. But yeah, Griffith's just looking like, oh my god, what is happening? I'm curious if Guts goes back to the battlefield and keeps that little piece of the sword. He might. But then that's when Bosco's like, the commander of the Raiders, you're mine. And again, the episode does such a good job of balancing like this fight with Adon and Casca getting to the climax that it has, and us worried about her and her well-being, and then getting worried about Guts and his well-being. What I love about it is Guts needs a Zod Ex Machina save him. Casca don't. Casca did it all on her own. I was like, hell yeah, you did. Now, obviously, Adon is not the same threat as Boscone, but I love the idea that Casca, like, she called herself helpless, but then when her back was up against the wall, she didn't rely on anyone to save her. Instead, she used her own strength, used the sword, jumped over him, and just sliced his face. Yes, please. Get it, girl. Love it. I'm like, yes. She used her own strength and her own power, and didn't even need anybody to help save her. And then she rallied the troops to go attack the castle even further. What else could we want, right? What else could we want for Casca's character? Not much. But then Guts is like, what do I do? And then Zod's like, oh, hey, I'm going to boomerang this sword over to you. And Guts is like, don't help me from afar. You're no match for Boscone. And that's when Zod boomerangs the sword. And then okay, so the sword is given, oh, interesting. Okay, so there is a hilt to this sword. I want to get down. The hilt does look a little bit different. It does look a little bit more like this, maybe. Let me get that sword, get it right. So the hilt of it has like an end to it. And then it does have this. So I guess if this was bandaged, it could look similar. But I don't think the end of it is curved and jagged in episode 1 like it is here. Now, Griffith says take the sword. You could interpret that 2 ways. One, Griffith is like knee-jerk reaction, guts, get the sword and live. That's what I think it was. I guess you could also assume, did Griffith know the sword was powerful like it was from Zod? I don't think so, because I think Guts in that moment needed a weapon to save the day and to save himself, and Griffith was like, it's right there, take advantage of it, which ties very nicely to the idea that Griffith is like, don't question the tools you're handed. Just use them. Griffith did not question where that sword came from. He didn't question any side effects that could happen if you touched it. Didn't question anything at all. He said, it's there for you to take and use, so use it. And do it for yourself. Which is what he has essentially been doing with every tool he's come across with. And I'm not just talking about weapons, I'm talking about people too. Any person that comes across that could be useful to him, he's not questioned using them. He's just been like, nope, gonna take advantage, gonna use this, and then figure it out later. And I think that that reaction he has to the sword, like just coming into there, is a perfect example of that. I think that epitomizes it. But damn! Guts, like, just Guts swinging that sword looking like a demon himself is like, just slices off Boscone and the horse's head. When the horse's head came off, the animation of the horse that kept moving until it fell, oh my god, that was incredible. I was like, oh, that was so freaking good. And Rickard's like, ha! And Judo's like, oh. We don't see Corcus's reaction. I like that Griffith's reaction is just, huh. Griffith doesn't look in shock. He just looks kind of like, he could really hurt someone with that sword. Good to know. I feel like Griffith in that moment is the meme of Bill Hader on SNL when he's like, I am both aroused and terrified. It's like, yes, that is an appropriate reaction to this scene. But yeah, and then I love Rickard's little happy face where he's like, he did it. He managed to do it. How did he? What's so fascinating about this scene now is that Guts is like, we've taken the castle. And when they see Casca and the flags of the Band of the White Hawk flying, they know that they've won. What's so fascinating about all of this is that Boscone's men still had the numbers. They probably could have, by sheer numbers, overwhelmed the Band of the White Hawk. But they lost their leadership. Their leadership was gone. They don't respect the king at all. And so now it's just a matter of, I like Griffith said, you can either run away and we'll spare you, or you can fight us and we'll kill you. One or the other. And that's what we end up with this. It's very good. It's a very good showing of just how much like morale can impact things. It reminded me a lot of Vinland Saga. The ending, like once the governor lost all reign of the battle itself, it reminded me a lot of the second season of Vinland Saga. And I'm sure down in the comments below, we can talk about it. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of that moment. I was like, all right, cool. We're going to hunt the remnants of the enemy. And unless they immediately flee, we're going to take them out. And then that's when the governor gets knocked off his horse. The moment that Griffith showed up, I was like, oh, Griffith's going to kill him. I thought he was going to decapitate him. I thought he was going to go and slice his sword, and then there went his head. That's what I thought was going to happen. It is not what ends up happening. So he makes like, the governor like talks about how he wanted Griffith to be spared. And he's like, not a day passed that I didn't think of you. We yearned for each other so passionately that night. Ugh. I'm like, and it's not, again, like I said back in episode 12, it is not the fact that Griffith is gay that makes this scene so awful. It's the fact that the governor's so awful. And the thing about it is that Griffith is so nonchalant. He's like, I don't bear any ill feelings at all, Governor. I don't think about you in any way. It upsets me when you speak of us yearning for one another, when I feel absolutely nothing for you at all. Neither ill feelings nor otherwise. He's like, I took advantage of an opportunity and you happened to be there at the time. It's like his eyes are so cold there. And he's like, look, I just used you. I didn't feel anything towards you. I still don't. I just don't like you. He's like, it's like even worse than that. He's like, I don't even not like you. I have no feelings towards you. You are just a tool for me to use. That's all. And that's almost worse. Like my best friend, she always says that, she's like, the worst thing I can do to you as a person is be indifferent to you. If I'm mad at you, it means I care about what you think and about how you influence me. She's like, if I'm mad at you, it shows there's care there and concern. But if I'm indifferent and don't feel anything towards you, then it's like you're dead to me. It's like I don't care, whatever, and I don't even want you in my life. That's how Griffith is. Now, the question is this indifference where Griffith is like, he has this indifference towards others. The question is that true of all of them? Because Griffith is proving he's a really good actor. He was able to be a good actor and convince this governor that he loved him, which was a lie. So I think personally that Griffith, the question is, does Griffith care at all about Casca? Does he care at all about Guts? Is it all a facade to keep them working for him? When Guts says he's going to leave, is Griffith's personality towards him going to alter? I don't know. I would like to think that Griffith trusts Casca more than that and doesn't just view her as a tool. I would like to think that Griffith and Guts have this special connection and Guts is more than just a tool to him. But I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know, and Griffith has proven to be a really good actor, and we know that Griffith is gonna, end up being king, and we don't know what happens with the others, so there's that to take into consideration. Yeah, it's bad. And so then Casca, oh my god, her just sitting there looking, and then she sees Guts walk up. Guts walking up with that damn codpiece and just coming up with a big sword over his shoulder. And then he says, good job. Just, come on now. Come on now, peak romance. But yeah, what's interesting here is Guts saying good job. Guts saying good job to Casca is something he would also say to Griffith. Right? So it shows that to him, they're kind of on equal terms now. That's kind of the cool thing, is that Guts is kind of acknowledging that Casca and Griffith are on equal terms to him. They're both equally special to him now. And I'm like, that's really freaking cool. And Casca, her letting Guts pick her up and carry her and help her see Griffith shows that she kind of views Guts the same way as well. The big question in all of this is Griffith. How does he feel about them? And because Casca points out the separation. She's like, it always feels like there's this separation between us and Griffith. And she's like, that's what I hate the most. And it does feel like Griffith is holding himself on a different pedestal than the others, and he's fine with it. But I wonder if he knows how how Casca and Guts feel about it. I don't know. But man, Guts showing up, that's such a good thing. Like him just saying good job to her. And then he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, it's just a scratch. And she's like, but to tell you the truth, I'd like for you to give me your shoulder. She's like, I need you to help me. I'm numb so I can see Guts over there. And of course, he's like in the center of attention, right? I love that he just holds her up like that. And that shot of them looking together. She's like, it's amazing. And she starts crying. And he's like, hey, don't be crying on me, girl. I ain't here for this. I ain't here for the waterworks. And she's like, I always feel like this. Whenever I see Griffith surrounded by his comrades like that. I don't know why, but my heart becomes filled with sorrow. Because he seems so far away. beyond my reach. And Guts is like, and at that moment, Guts is like, man, I feel like Guts hasn't really thought about that, because when he's up on the rooftop with the sword, it's like Guts is contemplating and saying what Griffith's words meant to him and how he wants to be on equal terms with him. And I don't know if Guts has ever thought of Griffith as beyond his reach. I don't think he has. Because, like, back in episode, what was it? Episode 9 or 10, he, like, came up when Griffith was injured and he just was going to barrel right in and see him. And everybody was like, oh, wait, he's seeing the royalty right now. And he's like, I don't care. I don't think Guts has ever considered him or Griffith to have a distance between themselves. So when he hears Casca say that, he's like, what are you talking about? There is no distance. This is stupid. Why are you making up all these fake things that aren't real, right? And he just looks for a second. And then so he says, that's not true. And he puts the sword down and picks her up. And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to go take you to see the captain. To see your captain. Shut up. Stop it. And the thing about it is that Guts knows that he's leaving. So he wants Casca to be taken care of by Griffith. Guts knows that he's leaving. He knows she's not going to like it. And so he's like, I'm going to get you cozy over here with Griffith, and then we'll be all good. Again, Yona of the Dawn-ish spoilers while I'm raising my hand like this. In Yona of the Dawn, there is a feeling at one point that the character that's like Griffith is leaving. Here's the thing. Yona of the Dawn spoilers above. I'm not going to raise my hand. Yona of the Dawn spoilers. The dynamic between Guts and Casca and Griffith reminds me a lot of Yona, Hawk, and Suwon in Yona of the Dawn, which the mangaka are friends. Of course there would be connections. But it almost feels like Griffith knows that Casca and Guts would be a good match. So he's trying to set them up together so he can go be king and they can have their own dealings. And then Guts, knowing that he's leaving, much like Griffith knows that he's leaving, in a sense, becoming king, Guts knows that he's leaving, so he's wanting to leave Casca with Griffith. And poor Casca's stuck between the two of them, being like, I maybe want both of you, but what are we doing with this? And it reminds me a lot of Yona being in Casca's position, and you have Suwon trying to leave her with Hawk, and Hawk trying to get her with Suwon, and it's like, just stop. And funny enough, in that scenario, I want Yona and Hawk to be together, but in this one, I would love Guts and Griffith being together, but we already know that doesn't work out, so I'm fine with Guts and Casca being together, but just whatever, into the Yona of the Dawn spoilers. But yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic, and she's just like, oh, okay. And I love her eyes just soften there, and she's like, yeah. And the way she says, yeah, he's like, come on, we'll take you to go see your captain. You like Griffith, right? You've always liked him, right? And the way that Casca goes, yeah, it's almost like her saying, well, I did like him, but then I realized that he didn't like me back, and I, with my unrequited love, stayed by his side because I didn't see anybody else that I fancied, but now I kind of do. So if we don't see Griffith, it's not that bad. And that's saying something for Casca's character, right? If her not seeing Griffith is not the end of the world. So then, and he leaves the sword. I like that Guts looks at the sword that's left. He's like, nah, couldn't have been the immortal Zod. Couldn't have been him on this majestic steed. But it was. My question is, I love that Zod's looking back to the sword like, bitch, you just left it on the steps? What if somebody picks that up and runs off with it, right? Which, I'm wondering if that's going to be the case. We're going to talk about the eclipse. We're going to talk about the eclipse and the demons descending and all this nonsense. We're going to talk about this because I have theories. And Zod just being like, just going to leave it there, huh? And as he goes away, the time of the great eclipse is near. So, interesting. Time of the great eclipse. No one seems to be talking about this. Doesn't seem to be known by mortals. And he says, and the devils will soon descend. So interesting. Devils soon descend. And then I'm going to put over here that we found out the Fief Lord back in episode 1. We're going to go back to that. The Fief Lord had a behelit. We're going to talk about that at the end of this episode. I'm making myself a little note to remind myself of that. But we have this great eclipse coming out of nowhere. Time to move the plot forward, I guess. We're not just going to have a little happy ending, not like what you think, and the demons will soon descend. But what does that mean? What does that hold? And you think that the episode's going to end, but then you have Faust at the very end, or Foth or whatever, or Foss or whatever his name is, with his Black Clan members. I was like, ugh, this is getting a little cultish, a little clannish. I'm not here for it. Nope. But they all are, I'm like, did you not learn the first time? He's like, oh, I've got this poison vial. I'm like, you're not Olenna. Quit. You're not going to be able to pull this off. I'm like, are we setting up a red wedding? Are we setting up a red wedding with this? And if you don't know Game of Thrones, you won't know what I'm talking about. But I'm like, are we setting up a red wedding? I think we are. But I think it's not going to go the way that they think it is. You have, Humpty Dumpty here. Back to him. He's got this vial of poison. He's like, we're going to poison Griffith. This will totally work out. And I was like, bitch, you saw when it didn't work out last time and Griffith was mad and now you're going to submit your doom? What? Because they're underestimating him. They're underestimating Griffith a lot. Right? A lot. And that's a problem. So it's like they think they're going to poison Griffith, but I'm like, dude, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think they're going to try. What I think is going to happen is the king is going to get poisoned, is what I think is going to happen. And here's the crazy thing. Old Queen shows up. I am not surprised that she's against Griffith because she's like, my daughter's dumb and naive. He's going to take the throne. He's going to take all my diamonds away. And here's the thing. I don't think the Queen and all of them have misplaced judgment entirely because I think Griffith taking over the throne, he would definitely kill them all in a heartbeat. I think they know their lives are in danger by Griffith becoming king. That much is certain. The question is, now that they've acted first, what's going to happen? So here's my thoughts. I think that they're going to try to poison Griffith. It's going to fail, and I think the king is going to be poisoned. And as he's dying, he's going to tell Griffith that he's in charge, or he's going to secure their marriage or something with Charlotte. I don't know. Or there's going to be a coup. When the king dies, there's going to be a coup and Griffith's going to take over by force. And metrosexual knight's going to come in and help him. Because they talk a lot also about the color white. The color white is brought up a lot in this. We have the white dragons, the white tigers, the white band of the white hawk. Like the band, it's the band of the hawk, but their symbol is a white hawk. So very much like Griffith. It's all very interesting, right? His Majesty will be conferring the supreme title of White Knights. All the knights are white there, like the tigers, everything. And it would put them on equal footing. He knows how to survive in battle, but the noble court is another story. And it's an immediately acting poison. Our scheme must not be traced back to us. And then the queen shows up like a freaking demon herself, where she shows up in her black robes. You can leave everything in my hands. Yeah, I don't trust her, and I don't think she's gonna get the job done exactly. I don't know. And maybe the horrible thing is, worst case scenario, they poison Charlotte and try to frame Griffith. What if they do that? What if they try to kill their own daughter and frame Griffith? Wouldn't that be insane? I don't know. I don't think it's gonna work. I think whatever their plan is going to fail, but the question is what damage will be done in the process of that. The other thing I was going to bring up from the episode 1 that I went and looked up is I wanted to see if the sword looks similar to the one that he gets from Zod. It is different. But the other thing was there's Guts in the forest and he's clutching his head and he has these swirling images of different creatures and demons surrounding him. I wanted to make sure that the demons in his vision did not look like Humpty Dumpty and the Queen. They don't exactly, but there's a little similarity there. So I'm like, are the Queen and Humpty Dumpty going to turn into demons? is this like great eclipse that's coming going to turn people into demons for like a hot second, and they're going to kill each other, and then they turn back into humans after the great eclipse is over? I don't know. He said the demons will descend. Will they possess people? Will, by them descending, does it mean that humans are going to turn into demons? We don't know. We don't know how that's going to go, right? But my thing is, too, is this is awfully conveniently timed to when Griffith possibly takes the throne. And if you notice, after... at episode 1, after he takes the throne, there's all these fief lords that can turn into demons surrounding them. There's all this darkness. So is the great eclipse tied with Griffith becoming king? Potentially. Can Griffith become a demon? Potentially. I mean, Guts has had so many devil imagery tied with him at this point. I honestly think, my theory with this is, and I talked about this several episodes ago, way back with Zod, I wonder if Zod's like his dad, his biological dad. Probably not. But what if Guts is like half demon or something? Or the mom in the tree with the corpses, she was like, the dad of her child, Guts, was a demon. And he's like a little half-blood or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But it wouldn't surprise me, and maybe since Zod is kind of an immortal demon himself, maybe Zod can recognize the demon in Guts' blood, and that's why he was drawn to him. Maybe. Will people become demons during this great eclipse? Will demons descend and start killing everybody? Will we have a red wedding? I don't know, but it seems like we're about to find out. I'm really excited, y'all. I'm really excited, but I'm also terrified. Because this episode was so freaking good. But yes, so I am wondering how these shenanigans are going to play out and how this is going to end up. But y'all, things are going to get crazy, and I'm not sure what we're going to do. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. Is Griffith planning his royal moment of becoming king at the same time of the great lunar eclipse intentionally or not? We'll find out. Maybe some more clues about that in next week's episode of Berserk.